In 1860, samurai visited the White House. The most famous of these was the assistant interpreter Tateishi Onojirō, nicknamed Tommy, who received a reported foot-high pile of love letters from American women each day during his time in the United States. This video introduces the true and incredible story of Tateishi Onojirō, the 1860 Japanese embassy, and how samurai inspired and challenged different groups of people and ideas within America before both the American Civil War and the fall of the Tokugawa shogunate. This video is based off my book, Civil War Samurai, the 1860 Japanese Embassy, and Tateishi Onojirō in Antebellum America, published by Leiden University Press. In 1860, most Americans had never met or seen a Japanese person. To many Americans, Japan was a mysterious and exotic land, as well as an economic opportunity, not just for the goods Japan could buy and sell, but also for the resources and rest Japan could offer whaling vessels in the Pacific. The expeditions of Commodore Matthew Perry to Japan in 1853 and 1854 were celebrated in the United States as the opening of Japan to American trade and civilization. But the reality of American life in 1860 was far from civilized. Over 4.5 million Black people were enslaved and enduring unspeakable horrors, and national unity was increasingly fractured over different visions of America's future. Perry's arrival exacerbated challenges already facing the Tokugawa shogunate, the government ruling Japan. Perry's expeditions are often heralded as the so-called opening of Japan, but Japan had never truly been isolated. Japanese people had engaged in social relations, trade, and cultural exchange with people from the Ryukyu Islands, Ezo, Portugal, Spain, China, the Netherlands, Russia, and Korea, among other places, long before Perry's arrival. The transnational flow of people and ideas to and from Japan has played a profound impact on global history for centuries. Nevertheless, after the first US-Japan Treaty in 1854, the 1858 Treaty of Amity and Commerce set the stage for the 1860 Japanese Embassy and changes that would forever reshape Japan. The 1860 Embassy was the first Japanese embassy to visit the United States and the first official Japanese delegation to leave Japan since 1613. Their goal was to ratify the Treaty of Amity and Commerce, which, among other conditions, granted American access to certain Japanese ports. After the embassy's 25 days in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C., the embassy spent 1 night in Baltimore, 8 days in Philadelphia, and finally 2 weeks in New York. From the moment the Japanese arrived, they were celebrated as a major commercial power and potential trade partner. Newspapers described the Japanese as, quote, the British of Asia, and encouraged the American people to do everything in their power to welcome the, quote, distinguished strangers. Both men and women aggressively pursued the Japanese for autographs, social exchange, and physical contact. One samurai even returned to his hotel one day to find an American man trying on his clothes in his absence. The 1860 Japanese Embassy was a cultural frenzy the United States had never seen before. At the center of this excitement was the celebrated and later controversial 17-year-old assistant interpreter Tateishi Onojirō, nicknamed Tommy. Newspapers reported American women sending Tateishi love letters and personal portraits. Public enthusiasm for Tateishi inspired numerous poems and songs. But the 1860 embassy was more than an exotic sensation. Tateishi and the Japanese men were unlike any men America had ever encountered diplomatically on American soil. The Japanese were perceived as aristocratic, adventurous, wealthy, highly educated, witty, targets of female admiration, and as having a deep influence over the future of American trade. These samurai were also men of color who were culturally non-European and also not Christian. These Japanese men challenged antebellum ideas about what it meant for a person or a culture to be civilized. Tateishi's reported friendliness and flirtiness inspired serious debates in the print culture of the time over the meaning of Japanese masculinity, civilization, and race. African-American newspapers and abolitionist writers celebrated the way in which the dignified behavior and the American reception of the 1860 Japanese embassy exposed state hypocrisy in connection to ideas about racial prejudice. African-American writers generated and imagined solidarity with the Japanese that inspired a perceived brotherhood surpassing seemingly insurmountable borders of language, geography, and culture. American women and children also pursued the Japanese for their own reasons and gave different meanings to these encounters. While American newspapers celebrated what they believed was the Japanese embassy's appreciation for and enjoyment of their time in the United States, many of the samurai had radically different interpretations of their encounters with American people. Some of the embassy members viewed the behavior of the Americans they saw as further proof that the United States was far from a civilized nation. Civil War Samurai discloses how these samurai and the idea of Japan influenced American culture and intellectual history before the American Civil War and the Japanese Civil War known as the Boshin War in ways that neither the government of Japan nor America could have predicted. After the 1860 embassy, Tateishi fought in the Boshin War on behalf of the shogunate and participated in many of the major endeavors and events of late 19th century Japan, such as the Iwakura mission and Japanese immigration to Hawaii. Tateishi's story has been largely overlooked in US-Japanese history because much of the historiography surrounding early US-Japan encounters focuses on Japan reacting to Perry and learning from and about the West and subsequently rushing to modernize. These histories are important, but not the full story. When a door opens, it opens both ways. The story of Tateishi and the 1860 Japanese embassy reveals samurai instigating change in America as Americans react to and respond to the cultural frenzy inspired by the Japanese. The 1860 Japanese embassy inspired different groups of people to challenge and reinterpret the assumptions of the world in which they lived in pursuit of human connection and alternate visions of what the world might be.